I am Elena Marquez, and I have just walked into a room where my son Ethan and his wife Lila think they are about to inherit my $4 million fortune. They believe I'm dead, lost in a Costa Rican ravine. Their faces pale as I sit down, my voice calm as desert stone. Surprised to see me, I ask, watching their world crumble. For 8 years, I sent them $485,000, thinking I was saving their dreams. Instead, they called me an ATM, laughing, as they spent my money on yachts and lies. I faked my death to see their true colors, and now, with their own words recorded, I am here to expose them. This is my story of heartbreak, revenge, and reclaiming my power. Stick around, because you will not believe what happens next. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Let us dive into a tale that will leave you speechless. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in October 2023, and I was sitting in my sunlit kitchen in Albuquerque, New Mexico, sipping chamomile tea. The desert light poured through my windows, painting the room in warm golds, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. At 60, I had built a life I was proud of: successful real estate investments, a cozy home, and a heart full of love for my son Ethan and his family. Then my phone buzzed and my world tilted. A text from Ethan, my 36-year-old son, lit up the screen. I opened it expecting a sweet update about my grandchildren, Sophia and Lucas. Instead, the words seared into me. The ATM just paid again. Tell Lila to book the spa weekend. Mom's money is burning a hole in my pocket. I froze, my tea growing cold in my hands. The ATM. That is what they called me. Not Mom, not Elena, but a machine that spit out cash. My heart pounded as I read the message again, hoping I had misunderstood. But there it was, brutal and clear, meant for Lila, his wife, not me. A mistake that cracked open a truth I had been blind to. For 8 years, I had sent Ethan $5,000 every month, believing he needed it to keep his tech startup afloat in Austin. I thought I was helping my son, the boy I had raised through sacrifice and love, build a future for his family. But in that moment, staring at those words, I felt something inside me break, not loudly, but quietly, like a glass splintering in slow motion. The love I had poured into Ethan was not love to him, it was a transaction. I set the phone down, my hands trembling, and gripped the edge of my kitchen counter. The desert outside stretched endlessly, mirroring the hollow ache in my chest. How long had they seen me this way? How many times had they laughed behind my back, spending my money while I believed their lies? I thought of every phone call, every "I love you," Mom, and wondered which ones were real. The woman who had spent decades defining herself by her love for her son felt like a stranger now. But as the shock settled, something else stirred a spark of anger, sharp and unfamiliar. I was not just a mother anymore. I was Elena Marquez, and I was done being anyone's ATM. As we pause here, I need your help to keep these stories alive. If my journey through betrayal and rebirth resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support lights up the desert path, letting me share more tales of courage and truth. It means everything to me. Now let me guide you back to the heart of my story. The desert sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my Albuquerque home as I sat alone that October evening in 2023, the sting of Ethan's text still raw. I was 60, widowed for over a decade, and my life had been shaped by loss and love. My husband Mateo was taken by a heart attack 12 years ago, leaving me with a modest life insurance policy and a handful of real estate investments we had built together. Those investments became my lifeline. I turned them into a fortune, carefully buying and selling properties across New Mexico and Colorado, growing our modest savings into millions. But wealth did not fill the void Mateo left. My purpose became Ethan, my only child, the boy I had raised to believe he could be anything. I had always seen my role as his protector, his provider. After Mateo's death, Ethan was my anchor, the reason I got out of bed each morning. I lived for his calls, his stories about his tech startup in Austin, his dreams of making it big. When he married Lila 6 years ago, I welcomed her like a daughter, thrilled to see Ethan build a family with Sophia, now 9, and Lucas, 6. My grandchildren's laughter was my joy, their pictures pinned to my fridge, a reminder of why I work so hard. I thought I was giving them stability, a foundation to thrive. Every month, I sent Ethan $5,000 wired directly to his account, no questions asked. He would call voice heavy with stress, saying the startup was struggling, that he just needed a little help to get by. I never hesitated. I wanted him to feel secure, to know his mom was there no matter what. Sitting in my quiet kitchen, I traced the edges of a photo from Sophia's last birthday, a rare visit, when they had come to Albuquerque. Ethan had hugged me, called me the best mom. I had believed him, but now that memory felt tainted, like a painting I had cherished only to find it was a fake. Had it all been a lie? The weight of my sacrifices pressed against my chest. I had given up so much vacations, new clothes, nights out, to ensure Ethan never knew the poverty I had clawed my way out of. Now I wondered if I had been funding a fantasy, not a future. The woman who had built an empire from grief was stirring, and she was not ready to let this betrayal go unanswered. The memory of that October 2023 evening lingered. As I sat in my Albuquerque home, Ethan's ATM text burning in my mind. To understand the depth of that betrayal, I had to go back to where it all began, my childhood, in a dusty trailer park outside Santa Fe. I was 10 when my father left, leaving my mother, a diner waitress, to raise me alone. We scraped by, her hands calloused from long shifts, her eyes tired but fierce. She taught me that love meant sacrifice, that security was worth fighting for. I swore Ethan would never know that kind of struggle. As a young mother, I worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses, waitressing, studying for my real estate license at night. Every penny went to Ethan: new shoes for school, piano lessons, a used laptop for his homework. I wanted him to have what I never did: options. When I met Mateo in college, we were 2 kids with big dreams and empty pockets. He studied business. I chased my real estate license. Together, we built a life starting with a small duplex we flipped for profit. Those early years were lean, but we were a team pouring every dollar into our future. By the time Ethan was a teenager, our investments had grown, and money was not a constant worry anymore. I thought we had raised a son who understood hard work, who would carry that legacy forward. After Mateo's death, I leaned into real estate even harder, turning our modest portfolio into millions. It was not about wealth. It was about ensuring Ethan and his family would always be safe. Looking back, I see how my love for Ethan blinded me. I wanted him to soar, to build his tech startup in Austin without the fear of failure I had known. When he asked for help, his voice echoing the boy who had once begged for fancy cereal, I could not say no. I thought I was giving him freedom, but now staring at that cruel text, I wondered if I'd given him too much. Had I taught him to expect handouts? Had my sacrifices created a man who saw me not as a mother, but as a resource? The desert night outside my window offered no answers, but the pain in my chest was sharpening into resolve. I was not just Elena, the grieving widow. I was a woman who had built an empire from nothing, and I was not about to let my son's greed tear it down. The October 2023 evening felt endless in my Albuquerque home. Ethan's ATM text a wound that would not stop bleeding. To understand how I got here, I had to revisit the rhythm of my life for the past 8 years. $5,000 wired to Ethan Every month, the heartbeat of trust I thought bound us. It began when he was 28, his voice crackling with ambition over the phone from Austin. His tech startup was teetering, he said, just needing a nudge to succeed. I sent the first $5,000 without hesitation, picturing the boy who had once drawn me pictures to cheer me up after Mateo's death. I wanted him to chase his dreams without the fear I had known growing up. Month after month, the transfers became my way of showing love. Ethan's calls always carried a new crisis, a late client payment, a looming bill for Sophia's school or Lucas' medical needs. Each story stirred my instinct to protect, to be the mother who never let her son fall. I would log into my banking app, the same one I used to manage my real estate empire, and send the money feeling a quiet pride. Nearly $500,000 over 8 years, each transfer a testament to my belief in him. I never asked for receipts or questioned his struggles. My trust was absolute, rooted in memories of tucking him in, promising he would never know the poverty that haunted my childhood. Now that trust felt like a noose. Sitting in my silent kitchen, the desert stars blinking outside, I saw those payments differently. Had I been enabling him? Was my love a weakness he had learned to exploit? The woman who had built millions through discipline and grit had not seen it coming. I thought I was giving Ethan a foundation, but that text suggested I had been building something else entirely, a lie. The pain was sharp, but it was also a spark. I was not just Elena, the mother who gave everything. I was a woman who had survived loss and built an empire, and I was starting to wonder what else I had been blind to. The desert night held no answers, but it whispered a challenge. Find out. That October night in 2023, the Albuquerque desert seemed to hold its breath as I grappled with Ethan's ATM, text its cruelty, unraveling the trust I had held for years. My kitchen, once a sanctuary, felt like a stage where my role as a loving mother had been mocked. I could not ignore the truth staring me in the face. My fingers still unsteady, opened my phone not to call Ethan, but to dig into the life he had hidden from me. Social media had always been a distant world, a place for glimpses of Sophia and Lucas's smiles. Now it became a window into betrayal. Lila's Instagram was a showcase of opulence, Gucci bags slung over her shoulder, candlelit dinners at Austin's elite restaurants, a private jet to Aspen with Ethan grinning beside her. Each post was a knife twisting deeper. Ethan's profile was worse photos of him in a sleek suit at a tech conference, a new Tesla parked outside their Austin home, captioned, "Grinding for the family." I remembered his tearful calls about unpaid bills, how I had sent money to save them. Now I saw a yacht party. Lila's wrist, sparkling with a diamond bracelet, posted days after Ethan claimed they could not afford Lucas' doctor visit. I saved every image, my heart racing with a mix of rage and disbelief. The desert outside my window was silent, but my mind roared. 8 years of sacrifices, skipped vacations, sleepless nights, managing investments had funded their charade. They were not struggling, they were thriving my money, painting their perfect life. I thought of Ethan's voice, so convincing when he had begged for help, and Lila's warm hugs when I visited, calling me mom. Had it all been an act? The mother who had poured everything into her son felt shattered, but the businesswoman who had built a fortune from nothing was waking up. I was not just hurt, I was furious, and that fury demanded answers. I closed my phone, the weight of betrayal heavy, but a plan was forming. I needed proof, not just of their lies, but of who they really were when they thought I was not watching. The Albuquerque dawn broke over the desert, painting my kitchen in soft pinks as I sat with my laptop, the sting of Ethan's ATM text and his lavish social media posts fueling a restless night in October 2023. The images of yachts and designer bracelets haunted me, but suspicion was not enough. I needed proof. My years as a real estate investor had taught me to trust facts over feelings, and I was not about to let my son's betrayal go unverified. I picked up my phone and called Patricia, my attorney, who recommended Marcus Rodriguez, a private investigator in Austin with a knack for uncovering financial deceit. By noon, I was in his cluttered office, surrounded by monitors and files laying out the text and my suspicions. Marcus listened, his eyes sharp but kind, as I recounted 8 years of sending Ethan $5,000 a month, believing his startup was struggling. I showed him the screenshots, Lila's luxury bags, Ethan's Tesla, their Aspen getaway. He nodded, jotting notes, and suggested we start with Ethan's business, Nexus Innovations. Using my real estate contacts, I reached out to a friend at the Travis County Business Registry. Her findings hit like a punch. Ethan's startup was not failing. It was thriving, reporting $350,000 in revenue last year, with a tidy profit of $160,000. I sat back stunned as Marcus cross-referenced bank records, confirming no trace of the crises Ethan had described, no unpaid bills, no medical emergencies for Lucas, no struggling mortgage. The truth settled like dust in my chest. Ethan had not needed my money. He had wanted it. Every call about a rough patch was a calculated lie, crafted to tug at my heart. I thought of the nights I had stayed up worrying about him cutting my own expenses to send more. The mother in me wanted to cry, but the businesswoman I had buried was rising, her resolve cold and clear. Marcus proposed deeper surveillance, tracking their spending, monitoring their communications, to uncover the extent of their deception. I agreed without hesitation. The desert sun climbed higher outside, but inside me a storm was brewing. Ethan and Lila thought they had played me for a fool, but they were about to learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who built an empire from heartbreak. The Albuquerque sunset painted my home office in fiery oranges as I sat with a leather-bound journal, the weight of Ethan's betrayal heavier than ever. It was late October 2023, and Marcus, my private investigator, had begun peeling back the layers of my son's lies. The initial findings about his thriving startup were just the start. Now I was piecing together a puzzle I had been too trusting to see. I opened my banking app, scrolling through 8 years of transfers, $5,000 every month, plus emergency payments, for fabricated crises, a $10,000 medical bill, for Sophia, a $7,000 car repair, a $15,000 business loan to save Nexus Innovations. Each entry was a memory of Ethan's voice strained with worry, pleading for help. I had believed every word. As I wrote, patterns emerged like cracks in a foundation. Ethan's calls always came after I had shared news of a property sale or a strong market month, as if he had been watching my success to time his requests. His stories grew bolder over time, small asks for a few $100s in the early years, escalating to thousands, each crisis perfectly crafted to pull at my heart. I remembered him mentioning Lucas, learning disability, needing costly tutoring, or Lila's freelance work drying up, forcing them to lean on me. Marcus's early reports confirmed none of it was true. No medical records for Sophia, no repair bills, no struggling business. My journal, filled with dates and amounts, a ledger of manipulation, totaling $485,000. The desert night closed in, and my hurt turned to fury. I had sacrificed so much nights alone, dreams deferred to give Ethan a life free of struggle. Yet he had studied me, learned my triggers, and turned my love into a weapon. I thought of his warm, "I love you, Mom," after each transfer, now hollow in my memory. The mother who had poured her heart into him was fading, replaced by a woman who saw clearly for the first time. I closed the journal, its pages a map of my blindness, and knew I needed more than proof of lies. I needed to know what Ethan and Lila truly thought of me. The desert stars blinked outside, cold and unyielding, mirroring the resolve hardening in my chest. They had played me for years, but the game was about to change. The Albuquerque night was heavy with silence, the desert stretching dark and endless beyond my office window in late October 2023. My journal lay open, its pages filled with the cold evidence of Ethan's 8-year manipulation, $485,000 in payments, each tied to a lie. The truth was suffocating, but it was the emotional weight that crushed me. I had built my life around being Ethan's mother, my love for him, the compass that guided every choice since Mateo's death. Now that compass was broken, every memory of his calls. His grateful words felt tainted. Had he ever meant them, or was I just a means to an end, a bank account dressed up as mom? I walked to my living room, the photos of Sophia and Lucas on the mantel staring back at me. Their smiles, once my joy, now carried a sting. Were they part of the lie, too? I thought of the sacrifices, the vacations I had skipped, the nights spent alone pouring my energy into Ethan's dreams while my own gathered dust. I had wanted him to feel secure, to never know the poverty I had escaped. Instead, I had built a cage of my own making, enabling his greed while believing it was love. The hurt was not just betrayal. It was the realization that I had lost myself in the process, defining my worth by how much I could give. Tears came, but they were not soft or cathartic. They burned, fueled by a rage I had not known I could feel. I saw Ethan's face in my mind, the boy who had clung to me after Mateo's funeral, now a man who had weaponized my grief. Lila's laughter echoed too, her warmth a facade I had trusted. The desert outside was unforgiving, but so was the clarity settling in me. I was not just a grieving widow or a generous mother anymore. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had turned loss into millions, and I deserved better than being reduced to an ATM. As I wiped my tears, a plan took shape, not just to uncover their lies, but to make them face the woman they had underestimated. The mother was hurting, but the fighter was awake, and she was ready to reclaim her power. The Albuquerque morning was crisp, the desert air, sharp as I sat in my office, the weight of Ethan's betrayal, a fire in my chest. It was November 2023, and the journal of his lies, $485,000 in manipulated payments, sat beside me, a testament to 8 years of blindness. The mother who had loved unconditionally was gone, replaced by a woman who saw clearly Ethan and Lila had played me, but they would not win. I was not content with just knowing the truth. I wanted them to feel the consequences of their deceit. My years as a real estate investor had taught me strategy, and now I would use it to turn their game against them. I needed a plan not just to expose them, but to strip away their facade and reveal their true selves. I met with Marcus, my private investigator, in his Austin office, his desk cluttered with evidence of Ethan's profitable startup and lavish spending. I told him I wanted more than financial records. I wanted their unguarded words, their private thoughts about me. But how Marcus suggested something radical. Fake my own death. The idea was shocking, yet it felt right. If I died, Ethan and Lila would think their ATM was gone, revealing their true feelings without fear of consequence. I would watch from the shadows, gathering undeniable proof of their betrayal. The plan was audacious, but I had built a fortune, taking calculated risks, and this was no different. Back home, I began sketching the outline with Marcus and my attorney, Patricia. We would stage a hiking accident in Costa Rica, a place I had visited before making it believable. I would adjust my will to name Ethan as the beneficiary, but with conditions allowing me to monitor his actions. Surveillance would capture their reactions, their words, their plans for my money. The desert sun climbed outside its light, steady and unyielding, like the resolve hardening in me. Ethan and Lila thought they had mastered manipulation, but they had underestimated me. I was not just a grieving mother anymore. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had built an empire from nothing, and I was ready to play their game better than they ever could. The Albuquerque winter sun cast a pale glow over my office in November 2023 as I sat with Patricia, my attorney, plotting the trap that would unravel Ethan and Lila's lies. The plan to fake my death was bold, but every detail had to be perfect. I had spent decades building a real estate empire through precision, and this was no different. Patricia, her glasses glinting under the desk lamp, warned me of the risks. If Ethan suspected anything before I revealed myself, he could challenge my mental competency or accuse me of fraud. But I knew my son. His greed would blind him to any cracks in my plan. He would see only the millions he thought were coming. We started with my will. I revised it to name Ethan as the primary beneficiary, but with a twist, a 30-day waiting period before assets could be transferred, giving me time to monitor his actions. I set up a trust structure that let me track every financial move while appearing to hand him control. Next, I began planting seeds of a fabricated decline. During our weekly calls, I mentioned small health issues, headaches, a touch of dizziness, nothing alarming, just enough to make Ethan think I was vulnerable. He responded with concern, urging me to rest, but I heard the undertone of relief in his voice, as if my weakness was his opportunity. To ensure Ethan and Lila revealed their true selves, Marcus arranged surveillance. He would install hidden cameras and microphones in their Austin home and Ethan's office, disguised as routine maintenance during one of Lila's lavish influencer parties. The equipment would capture every word, every plan once they thought I was gone. I also moved my wealth, millions in cash and properties, into offshore accounts and trusts, invisible to Ethan but fully under my control. The desert outside my window shimmered with frost, mirroring the cold resolve in my heart. I had given Ethan everything: love, money, trust, and he had turned it into a game. Now I was setting the board, and they had no idea the rules were about to change. I was Elena Marquez, not just a mother, but a strategist, and I was ready to outplay them at their own game. The Albuquerque winter deepened, and by December 2023, my plan to fake my death was taking shape. The desert outside my window glittered with frost, but inside, my resolve burned hot. I had spent weeks with Marcus and Patricia, crafting a scheme to expose Ethan and Lila's true selves, and now it was time to act. I told Ethan I was heading to Costa Rica for a month-long spiritual retreat, a digital detox in the cloud forests, to find peace after years of grief. It was not a stretch. I had taken similar trips since Mateo's death, searching for meaning. Ethan's voice was warm, encouraging me to take care of myself. But I sensed the undercurrent of relief, as if my absence freed him from pretending to care. In San Jose, I met Carlos, a retired detective Marcus trusted, who specialized in helping people disappear for legitimate reasons. His weathered face was serious as we planned the accident. I would fall into a ravine during a solo hike, leaving behind torn clothes, my phone and ID to make it convincing. The terrain was notorious for unrecovered bodies, and Carlos assured me the local authorities would assume the worst without filing false reports. I handed over my belongings at a remote trail, changing into plain clothes and slipping away to a private villa. The setup was flawless, but the isolation was heavy, cut off from the world, except for Marcus' secure laptop feed to monitor Ethan and Lila. As I settled into the villa, the desert's stark beauty a distant memory. I felt a strange calm. I had spent years defining myself by Ethan's needs, but this act was for me. I was risking everything to see who they were when they thought I was gone. The mother who had sent $485,000 over 8 years was fading, replaced by Elena Marquez, a woman who had built an empire from loss. The Costa Rican jungle hummed outside, alive and unforgiving, mirroring the strength I was rediscovering. Ethan and Lila thought they had won, but they were about to face the consequences of underestimating me. I opened the laptop, ready to watch their world unravel as mine came into focus. The Costa Rican villa was a world away from Albuquerque's desert, its jungle hum, a constant backdrop as I sat with Marcus' secure laptop in December 2023. My staged death, a hiking accident in a treacherous ravine, had been set in motion, and now I watched Ethan and Lila through hidden cameras in their Austin home. The mother, who had sent $485,000 over 8 years, held her breath waiting to see who they were when they thought I was gone. The embassy's call came at 4:30 p.m., their time. Ethan's face, captured in his office, shifted from annoyance to shock as he learned of my death. I searched for grief for the son who had once clung to me, but saw only calculation in his eyes. He called Lila immediately, and when she arrived, he broke the news flatly, as if reporting a business deal gone sour. I waited for tears, for some sign of loss, but instead, their conversation turned to money. Ethan mused about the end of my monthly payments, but brightened at the thought of inheriting my $4 million estate. Lila's eyes gleamed as they calculated their windfall, already planning a bigger house, a yacht, a new life. Later that night, I watched them toast with champagne, their laughter sharp and cold, raising glasses to the gift of my death. My heart fractured, not just from betrayal, but from the erasure of the love I had poured into them. The jungle outside roared with life, but inside I felt a chilling clarity. Ethan and Lila did not mourn me. They celebrated. Every "I love you" Mom had been a transaction, every hug a performance. The woman who had defined herself by their needs was gone, replaced by Elena Marquez, the strategist who had built a fortune from nothing. I saved every frame of their callousness, every word of their greed, knowing it would be their undoing. The desert's lessons of resilience echoed in me even here in the tropics. They thought my death was their victory, but I was alive, watching, and ready to turn their betrayal into a reckoning they would never forget. The Costa Rican jungle faded into memory as I stepped into Patricia's office in Albuquerque, January 2024, my heart a furnace of resolve. The will reading was set, Ethan and Lila expecting to inherit my $4 million estate after my staged death. I had watched their champagne toasts, their plans to spend my money, their laughter at my useful demise. Now it was time to face them. I walked into the conference room at 2:05 p.m., my presence a shockwave. Ethan's face drained of color, his jaw slack, while Lila gripped the table, her eyes wide with panic. The mother they had mocked as an ATM stood before them alive and unyielding. I sat across from them, my voice steady as desert stone. I did not raise it, did not need to. The truth was my weapon. I had seen everything I told them, my words cutting through their stunned silence. Their lies, their greed, their celebration of my death, all captured by Marcus cameras. Ethan tried to speak, his voice a whisper, claiming he could explain, but I silenced him with a raised hand. Lila's attempt at fake tears, calling me mom and insisting they had been heartbroken, fell flat. I knew better. I had heard their true thoughts, seen their plans for yachts and mansions, all funded by my years of sacrifice. Patricia opened her laptop, ready to project the evidence, but I held their gaze, letting the weight of my presence sink in. For 8 years, I had sent $485,000, believing I was saving Ethan's dreams. Instead, I had fueled their deceit. The pain was not the money. It was the love I had thought we shared, now exposed as a transaction. I was not the grieving widow they had manipulated anymore. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had built an empire from loss, and I was done being their fool. The desert had taught me resilience, and now it fueled my strength. They had underestimated me, but this moment, my return from the dead, was the beginning of their reckoning. The room was silent, but the storm inside me was just beginning to break. The conference room in Patricia's Albuquerque office was a battlefield of silence. The January 2024 air thick with Ethan and Lila's shock as I stood before them alive, their ATM no longer a ghost. My heart pounded not with fear, but with the fierce clarity of a woman done playing the fool. I nodded to Patricia and she pressed play on her laptop. The screen lit up with Marcus's surveillance footage, their voices filling the room like poison. Ethan's laugh echoed toasting to my useful death, while Lila mocked my loneliness, calling me a burden who lived for their approval. Their casual cruelty played out planning to buy a yacht, a mansion, all with my $4 million. They thought was theirs. Their faces crumpled as the recordings rolled. Ethan's eyes darted, searching for an escape, while Lila's hands trembled, her polished facade cracking. I watched them hear themselves dismiss my life's work, my decades of building a real estate empire, as mere luck they were entitled to. Every word they had spoken in private about my pathetic existence, my exhausting need to be needed, was now a noose tightening around them. I did not need to shout or cry. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. 8 years. I said, my voice low and steady. $485,000, given out of love while they laughed behind my back, turning my sacrifices into their luxury. The desert's unyielding strength coursed through me, grounding me as I faced their fear. They had thought me weak, a grieving widow to exploit, but they were wrong. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had turned pain into power, and this was their judgment day. The footage ended, leaving silence heavier than stone. Ethan muttered something about misunderstanding, but it was hollow, drowned by the truth. Lila's eyes welled up, but I saw no remorse, only panic at being caught. The mother, who had once lived for their smiles, was gone. In her place stood a strategist, ready to make them pay for every lie. The room felt electric, the climax of my plan unfolding, and I knew this was only the beginning of their consequences. The Albuquerque conference room felt like a courtroom as I stood over Ethan and Lila in January 2024, their faces pale from the surveillance footage exposing their betrayal. My voice was calm, but inside the desert fire of my resolve burned bright. Patricia slid a stack of papers across the table, her expression as unyielding as the New Mexico sun. They had two choices: sign a repayment agreement for the $485,000 they had taken from me over 8 years, plus interest, or face criminal charges for elder financial abuse and fraud. Ethan's eyes widened, his voice cracking, as he protested that they did not have the money. Lila's hands shook, her influencer polish gone, but I felt no pity, only the cold satisfaction of justice. They signed the papers, their hands unsteady, knowing prison was the alternative. The consequences were immediate and brutal. Within hours, they had to call their real estate agent to cancel the $300,000 deposit on a $6 million Austin mansion, losing it all. The yacht they had financed with my inheritance was repossessed, the loan called in with no mercy. Their credit cards maxed out on luxury purchases in anticipation of my millions went into default, their scores plummeting. I watched from my Scottsdale home, Marcus updates streaming in as their world began to crumble. They sold the Tesla, the designer jewelry, even the furniture I had thought they had bought on clearance during my visits. The desert outside my window stood silent a witness to my transformation. I was not the mother who had once sent money to ease Ethan's fabricated struggles. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had built a fortune through grit and now wielded it with precision. Their signatures on that agreement were not just a promise to repay, they were an admission of guilt, a crack in the facade they had built on my love. I knew this was only the start. Financial ruin was one thing, but I wanted their lies exposed to everyone who had believed their charm. The pain of their betrayal still lingered, but it fueled me now, driving me to ensure they would never underestimate me again. The game they had played for 8 years was over, and I was rewriting the rules. The Albuquerque spring of 2024 bloomed vibrant outside my window, but my focus was on the calculated destruction of Ethan and Lila's carefully crafted image. The repayment agreement they signed in January was only the beginning. Financial ruin was not enough. They had built their lives on my $485,000, portraying themselves as successful, generous Austin elites. Now I would strip that away. Marcus and I compiled a dossier, surveillance recordings, financial records, social media posts that laid bare their 8 years of deceit. Every clip of them laughing at my pathetic life, every receipt tied to my money was a weapon. I was not just a mother scorned. I was Elena Marquez, a strategist wielding truth like a blade. I sent the evidence to their entire social circle, their neighbors, friends, even parents of Sophia and Lucas' classmates. A calm, factual letter accompanied it, detailing how Ethan and Lila had manipulated me celebrating my death while spending my money on luxuries. The response was swift and merciless. Austin's tight-knit, elite community turned on them. Invitations to galas and brunches vanished. Their children faced whispers at school playdates canceled without explanation. Restaurants they had once flaunted on Instagram suddenly had no tables available. I watched through Marcus updates as their social world collapsed, their identity as the perfect couple reduced to whispers of fraud and betrayal. The desert sun burned bright, mirroring the clarity in my heart. I felt no guilt, only the satisfaction of justice. Ethan's calls once warm with "I love you." Mom had been a performance. Lila's hugs a calculated act. They had mocked me as a lonely widow, but I was rewriting the narrative. The woman who had once lived for their approval was gone, replaced by someone who demanded respect. Their social exile was a wound deeper than their financial loss, a public unmasking they could not escape. As I sat in my Albuquerque home, surrounded by the art I had begun painting, I knew this was just one piece of their reckoning. They had underestimated Elena Marquez, and now their world was paying the price for it. The Albuquerque summer of 2024 shimmered with heat, the desert mirroring the relentless fire of my mission. Ethan and Layla's social exile was satisfying, but I was not done. Their lies had cost me $485,000 over 8 years, and now their professional and financial worlds would collapse under the weight of their deceit. I leveraged my real estate network, quietly sharing the truth about Ethan's character with key players in Austin's tech and business scene. I did not exaggerate or lie. The evidence recordings of them mocking my pathetic life, proof of their profitable startup funded by my money, was damning enough. No one wants to work with a man who defrauds his own mother. Ethan's tech startup, Nexus Innovations, began to unravel. Clients once drawn to his charm dropped him one by one. Major contracts vanished, and within weeks, he lost 70% of his revenue. Marcus updates showed Ethan closing his sleek downtown office, letting go of his staff, and working from their now cramped Austin apartment. Lila, whose influencer career thrived on her polished image, found no one willing to hire her. Her social media posts, once brimming with luxury, went silent as brands distanced themselves from the scandal. They had built their lives on borrowed wealth, my wealth, and now their financial house of cards was falling. Their credit already battered from defaulting on loans for a mansion and yacht plummeted to the low 400s. Banks that once courted them now rejected their calls. They sold their Tesla, their designer clothes, and moved into a rundown two-bedroom apartment, a far cry from their gated Austin estate. I watched it unfold from my Albuquerque home, the desert's stark beauty, a reminder of my own resilience. The mother who had once sent money to save them was gone, replaced by Elena Marquez, a woman who had built an empire and now wielded it with precision. Their ruin was not just financial, it was a lesson in consequences. They had laughed at my generosity, but now they were learning what happens when you betray the woman who gave you everything. The Albuquerque autumn of 2024 glowed with golden light, the desert a quiet witness to my transformation. Ethan and Lila's financial and social ruin was complete, but I had one final move to ensure their betrayal became a lesson for the world. I had spent 8 years as their ATM, giving $485,000 while they mocked me, and now I would make their deceit public. I called a press conference, contacting news outlets across New Mexico and Texas, ready to share my story of elder financial abuse. Standing before cameras, I felt the weight of my journey from a grieving mother to a woman reclaiming her power. I looked into the lenses and spoke clearly, my voice steady as the desert stone. I told the world how Ethan, my son, and Lila had defrauded me for years, using lies about struggling to siphon my money for their lavish lifestyle. I played edited recordings, carefully protecting Sophia and Lucas' privacy, revealing their laughter at my pathetic life, their champagne toasts to my staged death. But I did not stop at their betrayal. I owned my part, admitting I had enabled their greed by never setting boundaries, mistaking endless giving for love. I urged others to demand respect, to say no, to protect their worth. The story exploded. Within hours, it went viral, shared across social media, picked up by national news, and dissected in articles about family dynamics and elder abuse. Ethan and Lila became cautionary tales, their faces synonymous with entitlement and deceit. In Austin, they could not escape the stares, the whispers, the judgment. Their story was used in financial seminars, social workers citing it to train others on spotting abuse. The desert sun set outside my window, its warmth a contrast to the cold justice I had delivered. I was not just Elena Marquez, the mother they had mocked. I was a voice for others, a woman who had turned pain into purpose, ensuring their betrayal would never be forgotten. They had underestimated me, and now the world knew the cost of their lies. The Albuquerque winter of 2024 wrapped my home in quiet serenity, the desert's vastness a mirror to the freedom I had found. Ethan and Lila's world had crumbled financially, socially, and publicly after I exposed their 8-year betrayal, costing me $485,000. But the greatest victory was not their ruin, it was my rebirth. For years, I had defined myself as Ethan's mother, my worth tied to his needs, my love a currency I spent without question. Now, standing in my sunlit living room, surrounded by landscapes I had painted, I was Elena Marquez, a woman who had built a fortune and rediscovered her soul. I started traveling, something I had always postponed to fund Ethan's lies. I watched the northern lights dance in Iceland, felt the pulse of Buenos Aires, learning tango, and stood in awe of ancient ruins in Peru. Alone, I found I was not lonely. I was alive, my days filled with color and discovery. Back home, I joined a book club, laughing with friends who valued my thoughts, not my bank account. I took up painting, my brushstrokes, capturing the desert's raw beauty, each canvas a step toward reclaiming myself. I even dated nothing serious, but enough to remind me I was still vibrant, worthy of joy. Most importantly, I learned to say no. No to draining obligations. No to people who saw me as a resource. No to guilt that once chained me to Ethan's demands. The desert taught me resilience, and I embraced it, setting boundaries that felt like armor. I no longer checked Ethan's social media or asked about him. He and Lila had moved to Nebraska, starting over under scrutiny, but they were no longer my concern. The mother who had lived for their approval was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth was not measured by what she gave. As I stood in my Albuquerque home, the winter light soft around me, I felt peace, not because I had destroyed their lies, but because I had rebuilt my life stronger, wiser, and unapologetically mine. The Albuquerque winter sun set over the desert, its golden light filling my home with warmth as I sat in January 2025, reflecting on my journey. Exposing Ethan and Lila's betrayal, 8 years of lies costing me $485,000, was not just about justice, it was about reclaiming my worth. I had been their ATM mother who thought love meant endless giving, but I learned it means demanding respect. Now standing in my vibrant life, filled with painting, travel, and true friends, I want to share this truth with you. If you are pouring yourself into someone who treats you like a resource, know you are not alone. You are not selfish for wanting boundaries. You are not wrong for protecting your heart. The desert taught me strength, and I am passing it on. Love should not drain you. It should lift you. If someone family or not expects you to sacrifice your peace, your finances, or your dignity, they do not love you. They love what you provide. Set boundaries. Say no without guilt. Your worth is not measured by how much you give, but by who you are. I was Elena Marquez, a woman who built an empire from loss, and I rose from betrayal to live unapologetically. You can too. Your story matters. Whether you are the hero or still finding your strength, embrace it and never let anyone reduce you to an ATM. If this story struck a chord, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tales of triumph and truth. Hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next episode. Trust me, we have got stories that will leave you speechless. Share your experiences in the comments. Your voice deserves to be heard. Until next time, keep fighting for the life you deserve. Hold your boundaries high. And remember, you are enough just as you are. I am Elena Marquez, and this has been my story. Thank you for listening, for standing with me, and for knowing your worth is yours to define.